Hello internet users. You know what I like? Castlevania. There's nothing quite like jumping around a castle, whipping and killing monsters to your heart's content. In the past year or so, I've really gotten into the series, and have been steadily working my way through these games. The ones that I've been enjoying the most though are the ones known as the Metroidvanias. I really have to say, these are some pretty great games. They have such a good mix of side-scrolling action, exploration, and RPG mechanics. That, in addition to the fantastic music and focus on gothic horror elements, easily makes these some of the best games I've ever played. And after playing through almost all of them by this point, I find it crazy that I've never been exposed to them until now. Another thing that I really like about the Castlevania series is how almost every game features a new character in a different point in time, facing off against the evil force of Dracula across different ages. It's like the Legend of Zelda timeline, except far less confusing. Some examples of the different settings of time periods include 1797, 1094, 1691, 1476, 2035. Wait, what? 2035? What the heck is this? That's not ye olden times of witches and werewolves. That's future times, when every hipster owns an iPhone 16, and the Final Fantasy VII remake is finally out. That's just crazy. Even if you've never played a Castlevania game before, if you've at least heard of it, you'd know that it's known for having a European fantasy-esque setting. Heck, there was even one that took place during World War I, and that didn't raise any eyebrows. But the future? What am I supposed to think when I hear something like that? It's like if Nintendo suddenly released a Legend of Zelda game that was set in a world just as modern as our own. You'd be shocked. You'd be confused. You'd be outraged. Konami even made it a selling point on the back of the box, too. How can a series make such a drastic change of setting without suffering a massive backlash from its fanbase? Well, believe it or not only was this game well received, but it's considered among many Castlevania fans to be one of the best games in the series, and personally speaking, it is easily one of my favorite games for the Game Boy Advance. If you've ever heard of this game before and are currently scratching your head as to how a Castlevania game could be so well loved when it has a futuristic setting, well then strap on your helmets, kids. We're gonna take a tour through Dracula's castle and find out. So the game starts with an opening monologue of our main character, Soma Cruz, who is a high school foreign exchange student living in Japan. Vampire hunter, vampire hunter, vampire hunter, vampire hunter, high school student living in Japan. You know, I can't help but feel like there's something a little bit different here. So what we learn from Soma's monologue is that he is on his way to the Hakuba Shrine in order to watch a solar eclipse with his childhood friend and classmate, Mina Hakuba. Wait a second. You just said you were an exchange student. How are you childhood friends with her? That doesn't even make any sense. Well, actually, there is an explanation for this. You see, in the Japanese version, Soma's last name is Kurusu, and instead of being a foreign student, he is just a straight-up Japanese guy. I honestly don't know why they bothered with such a pointless change, because aside from this one line, this information is never addressed or brought up again anywhere. Localization, because if it's not a jelly donut, you can't possibly relate to it. So as Soma makes his way up these stairs to the shrine, he finds himself passing out and waking up at the gate to an eerie-looking castle. A mysterious man in a suit appears before him and Mina. He informs the pair that they are currently in Dracula's castle, which is also apparently inside of the solar eclipse. How the heck do you get inside a solar eclipse? But before he can say any more, suddenly monsters attack. Upon killing one of the creatures, it is revealed that Soma somehow now has the ability to absorb the souls of the monsters he slays. From there, the mysterious man tells him that because he has this power, Soma must make his way to the castle's master chamber in order to find a way for him and Mina to escape. And it's here that our adventure begins, and man does the first area start with some pumpin' music. It really gets you in the mood to immediately start killing all the monstrosities in your way, especially those pesky skeletons that want to throw their bones at your head. I wasn't kidding about those helmets, folks. Those things would probably hurt a little bit. Your starting weapon is pretty basic and has a short range, but you'll quickly find and use something else pretty fast. This process will repeat itself a lot, by the way. If you're the type of person who explores every nook and cranny before moving on, your playthrough will probably be like mine, where you'll end up with a new and better weapon just as soon as you finish getting used to the last one you just picked up. You know, I have to say though, while it did turn out to be a good thing that Soma brought a pocket knife with him today, it is just a little concerning when you consider that his original plans were to spend the day with Mina. I don't think that's the kind of protection you're supposed to bring when you make plans with a girl, Soma. Like the other two Castlevania games on the GBA that came before it, Aria of Sorrow has the Metroidvania style of gameplay that has you freely exploring Dracula's castle as you defeat bosses and gain different abilities, allowing you to reach new places. However, what really sets Aria of Sorrow and its sequel apart from the rest of the games in the series is a unique gameplay mechanic known as the Soul System. Like it was mentioned before in the opening cutscene, Soma has the ability to collect the souls of the monsters he kills. However, from a gameplay perspective, this means so much more. Upon gaining souls over the course of your exploration, you will also gain new attacks and abilities based on which souls you collect. These souls come in 3 different varieties. The red souls mainly function as projectiles, being activated by pressing up and B at the same time, essentially acting as the sub-weapons from previous Castlevania games, but with a much larger assortment. It's pretty simple to grasp. Get the Axe Knight soul, throw axes. Get the Flame Demon soul, shoot fireballs. Get the Mudman soul, throw mud. The blue souls have varying abilities, ranging from transformations to summoning familiars. These are switched on and off by pressing the R button. And finally there is the yellow souls. These souls are basically a passive ability that benefits your stats in one way or another. In the game you are able to have one of each soul color equipped at one time. When all of this is put into action, it makes for incredibly fun gameplay, especially when you consider that every single enemy in the game has the possibility to drop a soul when defeated. Whenever you get a new soul, you'll always feel excited to find out what it does, never knowing what to expect. The best thing to compare this to would be Mega Man, only instead of just gaining the abilities of the bosses you defeat, you can also do the same with regular enemies. The game designers really knew what they were doing when making this game, because this is a game where you're constantly killing things in your way. Enemies only have a very slim chance of dropping their souls. This way you're not constantly bombarded with messages whenever you encounter a new enemy type. And every playthrough will likely have you end up with different sets of souls to use, helping to keep the game from feeling stale when replayed. Not to mention, there is such a huge variety in all of the enemies. Yeah, every now and then you'll see a palette swap, but the majority of the time I never felt like the game was running out of monsters to throw at me. With so many different combinations of souls to choose from, this game really makes it fun and easy to customize Soma to suit your playstyle. However, for as much as I like this system, it's not without its flaws. In the later parts of the game, you pretty much realize that most of the souls you get from bosses, which most are guaranteed pre-programmed drops by the way, are basically better than anything else you can get your hands on at that point. Seriously, once I got this laser attack from a boss, I just used it for the rest of the game. There was no reason not to. Every time I play this game now, this pretty much just ends up happening, and every other red soul that I've grabbed up to that point and afterward is essentially just obsolete. I guess I can't be too harsh on the game for this though, as the boss you get it from is technically optional, but even still, once you're aware of where to go for it, it's not that difficult to get. As Soma makes his way through the castle, he ends up encountering a few different people. The first of which is a man in a white suit who, yep, he's evil, just look at him. I'd bet everything I own that he's the bad guy. This guy is called Graham Jones. He's some kind of missionary that is for some reason wandering the castle. He informs us that Dracula was completely destroyed in the year 1999, and his castle was sealed away within the eclipse that we are in now. And in addition to that, there is a prophecy that on 2035, someone will arrive in the castle and inherit all of Dracula's powers. And uh-oh, that's this year! Who would have thought? Another person we come across early on is a woman named Yoko, who not so subtly lets it slip to the player that the man we met at the start of the game is actually Alucard from Symphony of the Night. She also tells us that the other guy we met earlier is actually dangerous. Well, no duh! You can't have a face like that with this art style and not be evil. One more character that we meet early on is a character named Hammer. Apparently he is a member of the US military sent to investigate the shrine during the eclipse. But by his own admission, he abandoned his assignment in order to open up a shop and make some money. What a charming fellow. After encountering Hammer, he sets up his shop at the entrance of the castle, where you can buy plenty of different items and weapons from him. Next, let's talk about the game's enemies. In general, one of the things I like about Castlevania is its enemies. As a big fan of horror, I can really appreciate how the series incorporates this theme into many of the monsters. Sure, you have your basic RPG enemies like bats and skeletons, but as you progress, you'll encounter crazy things like evil butchers, flesh golems, and even succubus that appear in the form of shrine maidens calling for help in an attempt to trick you. You can't fool me, game. If I'm able to hit something, obviously I'm supposed to kill it. Warning, advice does not apply in real life. Do not attempt. Another thing that's really cool is the zombie soldiers you encounter at the start of the game. You might think that zombies tossing grenades at you is really out of place in a Castlevania game, but according to the game's enemy's description, these things are the soldiers who died during that referenced incident in 1999 when Dracula was destroyed. A small but pretty nice touch to the game if you ask me. After progressing through the game enough, eventually we meet Graham Jones again, where we learn that he believes that he is Dracula and is set to be the one to inherit his powers. His reason for believing this? He was born on the same day that Dracula was destroyed. So what, man? How does that make you Dracula? In today's world, there are over 350,000 births every day, and I can only imagine how much higher that number is going to be by 2035. What makes you so special? You weren't the only one born on that day. You probably weren't the only one born in the same minute. He also tells Soma that the only reason he was nice to him was because he didn't perceive him as a threat. But once he learns about the ability that Soma has, he begins to freak out and become angry. Next, I want to talk about one of the best parts of the game, the boss fights. In the previous two Castlevania games for the GBA, the bosses weren't bad, but they weren't exactly amazing either. In Aria of Sorrow, though, they really tried to experiment here. Take this one. You just walked into the underground cemetery. All of a sudden, the music turns into this eerie tune. Now you're in this hallway where a bunch of people in the background are walking towards something. As you continue, you realize that they are all going into the boss room. You enter the boss room, and you see this thing in here and realize that all of those people were walking to become a part of it. Yeah, they had an atmospheric build-up to a boss fight against a giant ball of naked people on the Game Boy Advance, and it totally worked. Another cool boss fight is the Headhunter. Every phase of the fight involves it putting on another head and assuming a different form, until you get to the last phase where it is revealed that it's actually a freaky lizard monster. A nice touch with this boss fight is just with the background. You can see all the different heads that it's collected over who knows how long. Some of them, though, can feel a little dumb to me. Take the first boss, for example. It's just a giant skeleton. I really hate when games do this. Hey, you know that thing you've been killing for a while? Now it's slightly bigger, go kill it again. I can let that slide because it's the first boss. But what's really unforgivable is that they do it again later in the game. Oh look, a big bat. I'm so scared. Am I going to have to hit it 3 times instead of once now? Oh, the horror. The extra button presses will be enough to drive me insane. Oh. That's the boss. After battling all of the bosses and collecting an arsenal of powerful abilities and souls, we eventually reach the Master Chamber. It is here that we must confront Graham Jones, who has pretty much gone insane with power at this point. It's here where the game starts to branch off. If you haven't met certain requirements before heading into this fight, you will be given the normal ending after defeating Jones, and Soma will escape the castle with Mina. If you've done everything needed for the true ending, Jones will transform into another form, continuing the fight with another phase. And what in the hell am I looking at? His final form apparently has the heads of 2 women locked together with a ring through their eye sockets. And a dick. What was this game rated again? Oh yeah, T for traumatizing. Upon defeating this form, it is revealed that, spoiler alert, but not really, it's a pretty easy twist to see coming, but I'm just gonna put this here anyway so people don't get mad at me. You got like 5 seconds before I move on. It turns out that Soma was in fact the true reincarnation of Dracula this whole time. Who would have thought that someone with the power to control the monsters in Dracula's castle would turn out to be Dracula? However, Soma does not want to become the next Lord of Darkness. Arikado informs him that the only way to prevent him from fully becoming Dracula is for him to destroy the source of chaos within the castle. Now, to finish everything up and escape the castle, Soma enters the chaotic realm in order to confront the game's true final boss. This area really isn't anything too special, it's just a bunch of areas in the game that are jumbled together in a messed up way without any color. It's pretty linear, and by now you should be more than powerful enough to breeze through it without any difficulty. The final boss itself, though, is a little obnoxious. Take the first phase here. Everything on screen just blends together and you're suddenly bombarded with a bunch of attacks. I seriously find it hard to believe that they thought this was a good and fun idea. Once the final form of chaos is destroyed, Soma is engulfed in light and is somehow able to hear a goodbye message from everyone he's met while in the castle. He awakes and he and Mina watch as the eclipse ends. And that was Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. After beating it yet again, I still come out with more positive things to say about it than negatives. I have to say they handled the idea of a Castlevania set in the future very well. The game feels just as much like a Castlevania as the other games, and doesn't need this fact to set itself apart, and stands out good enough on its own with its unique gameplay elements. Compared to the other Metroidvania-styled games in the series, I can easily say that this is one of the more easier ones, if not the easiest. That's not to say that this game is a piece of cake all the way through or anything. There are definitely some moments that will be challenging, and you can even unlock a hard mode after beating the game once, too. If you're new to Castlevania or looking to get into this kind of genre of game, I'd highly recommend this game as a good starting point, as it's also a bit shorter than other ones as well. As of now, you can find Aria of Sorrow and the other GBA Castlevania games on the Nintendo eShop on the Wii U. Check them out there if you're looking for a way to play them. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go make another Pokemon-related video before my viewer base leaves me forever.